Alright guys, what is going on? And welcome back to another episode of Ironman. To start us off today, we're going straight to the torso. This was a little bit more difficult than standard. I did this legitimately, I didn't leech it, and every single lobby that I had to be a part of, I had to be the host, of course. No Ironman can accept aid, right? But if you're an Ironman today, you won't have to deal with that. You can just be a part of a lobby, a party, a barbarian assault team. I'm not too 100% sure how that works, but from what I've heard, it has been fixed. But back then, that was a bit of a pain in the dickhole. But it's now time to train at Waterbirth. I need to get myself 130 in attack and strength combined to gain access to the Warriors Guild. I haven't started Slayer at this point, and I think once I unlock the Rune Defender, that's when I'll, flick the switch and make the transition to start training my combats with Slayer. So now that I've unlocked 130 between the two, it's now time to work on some of the other prerequisites for getting in the guild and unlocking tokens. So my method that I'm going to be using to get myself warrior tokens is going to be using the animate armor structure, things like building up the guys and then breaking them back down and receiving tokens for doing so. Normally, if this was not an Iron Man account, I'd probably be doing this on, say, Mithril, maybe even Adamant soldiers and getting the tokens from there. But unfortunately, I don't really have access to Mithril soldiers, so my current game plan is to get myself a bunch of steel sets. So for that, I need the steel plate body, the steel plate legs, and the steel full helm. You don't need the shield for this process, but what I'm doing here is getting all the raw resources. Obviously, getting iron from northeast of Yanil and getting the coal from Mudlode Mine. Getting a few levels along the way is nice, but the thing is that I don't currently have the ability to make the steel plate bodies at 48. So often when I say to train early stats, the best way to train things is often with quests. So here I'm going to be doing Elemental Workshop Part 1 and 2. I'd be a little bit of a hypocrite if I trained it in any other way. So if you're looking for some pretty free smithing experience, I would recommend these two quests. They're quite nice, and the shields come in handy for wyverns later on down the track. Of course, if you're slaying them, of course. I mean, these quests, I think they kind of are needed for a few different things, and I mean, getting them out of the way is always going to be nice. You get some really good experience, and from there I unlocked a smithing level of 47. So the only thing I need now is one more level to have the ability to create the steel plate bodies. So instead of actually getting 48, I thought I would just go to Emily in the Falador pub and buy some Dwarven Stout. So these give me a +1 boost and will allow me to make the plate bodies for a little bit. But I'm going to be logging in and out to reset my boost. For those who don't know, if you log out whilst you have a boost active and then log back in, the current boost that you had prior to the login, you get a fresh 60-second cycle of it. So the trick is, if you log out every 55 approximate seconds, you have the ability to, have the boost indefinitely as long as you log out. So that's what I'm going to be taking advantage of here. And in the end, what I managed to do was get myself 48 smithing from just, having the boost and making the plate bodies. So in the end, it wasn't too difficult, and I didn't actually need the boost for a hell of a long time. So eventually we got the steel plate bodies done, we got the steel plate legs and full helms as well, and I had the ability to move on and start, taking out the animated armor. So this is going to be kind of my gear setup for taking on these warriors. I don't know 100% sure which, method of obtaining warrior tokens is the fastest, but I'm pretty sure taking down these little soldiers is probably my favorite thing to do out of everything. I couldn't list off all the different tasks, but from memory, they're not the greatest. And this one is probably the fastest way that I can think of in the most tolerable fashion that I can get things done. But in the end, I managed to stay there for a few hours. I don't actually know how many warrior tokens this is per minute or whatever, but I think for the most part, if you're wanting to get from 0 to rune in terms of defenders, for the most part, it's going to take you around 2,000 to 3,000 warrior tokens. That's pretty much every time I get an account from 0 to rune, I always try to at least have 2,000 before I allow myself to leave the area that I go to. It doesn't always work that way, but for the most part, if you have fairly consistent RNG and it isn't the grossest thing ever, and your ability to kill the Cyclopses isn't too bad, you can generally get things done. But if you look at my inventory, you will be able to see how many tokens I use for each defender. I think the defender that took me the most amount of time is the one coming up. The Mithril defender took me, I don't know how long, like way too many tokens to make any form of sense, but I was quite lucky. I did manage to get all of my rune all my defenders up into rune fairly decently in the allocated warrior tokens, with a few left over for the dragons that have not yet been released for as when I recorded these clips. But I now have the gear setup that I kind of want to have when it comes to starting Slayer. The only thing I'm missing is a plate legs that gives me good magic defense, but throughout the duration of this account, I don't think I'm going to be showing off the bank a whole lot. There's not many times where I feel like showing the bank in its entirety is really even worth doing, but if you're one of those people who are quite interested in keeping up to date with, bank videos, etc., I will be having a few clips like this along the way that you'll be able to just take notes of where I'm at. So when I progress the next time around, you'll be able to see, how it's changed, what is different, what's the new additions to the bank account. But for now, this is where my bank currently stands. And from here, I kind of want to move on to pest control because, as I said, I need full rune, obviously. Full rune, full void. But yeah, getting the legs is probably the highest priority. So I'm going to go jump into pest control, and that's going to be great. For my first void piece, I'm going to get the bottom. The reason being is because if I check my bank account, I think these have a better magic defense than the green chaps. I will double check with that. I think these have fairly good mage attack defense against them. So if we look at our chaps, we've got +2. Chuck these bad boys, +24. Also, kind of like, I don't want to reduce my DPS if I'm prayer flicking. So I will choose to grab the skirt instead of the top first at least. So I can swap these out for slay tasks that I do in fact need, mage defense, such as like Pythians, Bloodvelds, and things along those lines. But I have a current slay task, and one thing I need to touch up on is that now that I've got my torso, now that I've got my glory, my de-skimming, my berserk helm, my defender, and all that good stuff, the only thing I kind of want is maybe rune gloves or dragon or barrows. However, I think I'm going to take a break from questing and such like that and get stuck into Slayer, because if you look at my stats, I'm pretty advanced in these areas and pretty lacking in Slayer. Relatively advanced, I should say. 68 strength is nothing to boast about. But yeah, we used quite a few warrior tickets on the rune defender, but it did give us a fair bit of strength XP, and I'm not too far off 69, which is nice. So I'm going to get stuck into this Slayer task. I've got 134 trolls to kill. I really don't like this Slayer task, only because it's difficult for me to prayer flick it. I'm not sure if I'm alone in that stance, but I have issues prayer flicking trolls. Anything with an attack speed that's slightly slow, it kind of feels like it's inconsistent, even though it's not. There is a pattern, obviously, that you can get used to, but I'm yet to do it consistently. So we're going to start our Slayer task now, and I think now that I've got most of the gear I want, in regards to DPS, the ones I mentioned earlier, I think actually I'm going to get a Ring of Life. I think I'm actually going to start going towards more Slayer than I will questing and things along that nature. Obviously, I will come back and get myself rune gloves at the very least at some point soon. I'm not too far off being able to. I could actually boost up to 70 cooking and do the monkey -1. So I might do that at some point, but I think I'll just get it naturally. Because I don't, 70 is not that difficult to get, and I'm not in a massive hurry to get the gloves, of course. So I'm going to stick with that for a little bit, get stuck into a bit of Slayer, maybe look towards unlocking the Slayer mask, but we'll see how we go. But I'm going to get stuck into this troll task, and wish me luck that I don't die. Okay, I've got to admit, the wish me luck on not dying was kind of a joke, but that Slayer task wasn't. That got me down to 3 prayer points. I kind of went under the assumption that I was going to do 2 trips, so I kind of just left my prayer on melee, just drain out. But when it came down to it, I had about 40 left and still about 15 prayer points, so I tried to kind of conserve myself and managed to just scrape through. So that was my first Slay task with a bit of substance. I mean, 12 vampires and then 100 plus desert lizards was kind of an insult. So that large amount of trolls was nice, but it's also got me thinking about my stat kind of progression. I haven't really spoken to you guys much about this because I wasn't too sure how I would approach it, but my standard approach right now is to prioritize strength. So my goal was to get 70 attack and just leave it there and train strength infinitely and leave defense at 52. However, that troll task has opened my eyes and realized if I don't train my defense, there's a good chance if I disconnect, I'm losing my torso, I'm losing a lot of things. So I'm probably going to have to put in some work and get in my defense a little bit higher, because at the moment it's kind of concerning how much damage I'm taking, and I don't think it would take too much time to raise my defense. The positive also on the back end of that is that it raises my combat level. As I'm at 77 right now, the advantage of raising my combat level would be that I unlock the Slayer Master Neve a lot earlier than I usually would. So if I was just training strength, I'd need to get, at least like 85 strength by the time I'd be 85 combat. I haven't exactly worked that out, but I know for a fact if I get my defense up to maybe 60, maybe 65, even 70-ish, there's a good chance that my combat level will reach that 85 a lot quicker, and therefore I will unlock Neve a lot faster. And overall, I think that will benefit me in the long run in terms of Slayer XP in general. So my plan of attack right now for the next few hours, or for the next few level ups at least, will be to hit 70 strength, and then I'm going to switch attack styles and maybe look towards getting 60 defense and then maybe 70 attack, and we'll see how we go. I'm just trying to figure out how to distribute this, because obviously if you're training defense, if you're training on the defense style, you get a +3 defense boost, which is good if you're tanking things in Barbarian Assault or the Abyss or whatever. But if you're training, you sacrifice the +3 attack or +3 strength, which means overall you're sacrificing damage, and that's something I want to avoid at all costs. But since it'll enable me to unlock Neve quicker, and hopefully that means unlocking the Black Mask faster, I think it's going to be worth getting my defense up just a little bit. Definitely nothing over 70, because at that point I'm sacrificing efficiency in the long run. So yeah, I'm quite torn whether 60 or 70 is where I'm going to park my defense, but I know for a fact 70 is where I'm going to keep my attack, because obviously any attack that I'm training with my scimitar, forgive me, the Abyssal Whip, when I do unlock it, every second that I train attack over 70 with the scimitar, it's going to be inefficient compared to a whip. So whilst I've got a skimmy, fuck my life, I'm going to train strength as much as possible, with the exception of getting 70 attack and maybe 70 defense. So I'm going to see what my next task is. Please don't be Desert Lizards. 158 Banshees. This is kind of okay. I don't have an issue with Banshees, because they do have a nice drop that I do, value quite highly, and that is Pure Essence. I'm going to, actually, I don't know if taking the fairy ring is going to be worth it. Is this even going to be worth it? If I teleport from here, yeah, it's definitely going to be worth it. So, the reason why I'm doing this is because there's a fairy ring close to Counterfeit, so I'm going to take that. But the reason why Banshees, I should probably finish that tangent, is because they drop Pure Essence. And currently I have no means, or I could mine Pure Essence, but I have no intention of mining the stuff. I'm not going to mine any of my Pure Essence for rune crafting. I might be eating my words further down the track, but for now I have no interest in mining that stuff when it is a possible Slayer drop. I will mine it in the future if I feel like it's not adequate, or I need 30 for a quest and I don't have just enough. So that's the exceptions to the rule that I will have. But for the most part, I want to be slaying most of my Pure Essence, and Banshee is a good way to start it. So I'm going to go ahead and get stuck into this task, and I'm not going to ask for luck, because I know I'm not going to die.